Let me tell you about the 5 things that kill your value in front of a man, and why everything you think you know about keeping his interest is probably destroying it instead. There are 5 specific behaviors that most women believe make them more attractive, more lovable, more worthy of commitment. But here's the brutal truth no one wants to admit. These exact same behaviors are what make him lose respect for you, lose attraction to you, and eventually lose interest altogether. I'm talking about things you do with pure intentions, thinking you're being a good woman, a supportive partner, someone worth choosing. But in his mind, these behaviors signal something completely different. They signal that your value is cheap, that your attention is easy to get, that you don't really know your own worth. And once a man perceives you this way, it's almost impossible to change his mind. You see, most women have been taught that love means sacrifice, availability, proving how much you care through your actions. But here's what no one tells you. The 5 behaviors you think demonstrate your value are often the exact same ones that make you invisible to him. Because male psychology doesn't work the way we've been conditioned to believe. Men don't fall in love with the woman who tries the hardest. They fall in love with the woman who makes them feel like they have to try harder. And the difference between those 2 women isn't about playing games or being manipulative. It's about understanding the psychology of desire, the nature of polarity, and the energy that creates lasting attraction versus the energy that kills it slowly, quietly, until one day he looks at you and feels nothing. Not anger, not frustration, just emptiness where passion used to be. That's why in this video, I'm breaking down the 5 subtle behaviors that destroy your value in his eyes, even when your intentions are pure. Because high value energy isn't about what you do for him. It's about who you become when you're with him. And if you're tired of feeling like you're giving your all, but getting breadcrumbs in return, if you're exhausted from trying to prove your worth instead of owning it, stay with me. The next 40 minutes will show you how to shift from being the woman he settles for to being the woman he can't imagine living without. Before we dive into the 5 behaviors that kill your value, you need to understand something fundamental about how attraction actually works. Because everything you've been taught about keeping a man interested is backwards. Society tells women that love is about sacrifice, compromise, and putting his needs first. That if you're nurturing enough, supportive enough, understanding enough, he'll naturally want to commit to you. But that's not how masculine psychology operates. Men are biologically wired to pursue what feels valuable, rare, and slightly out of reach. Not impossible to get, but not guaranteed either. It's the same instinct that drives them to work harder for a promotion they're not sure they'll get, to want the car they have to save for, to chase the goal that challenges them. When something comes too easily, when there's no effort required, when the outcome is certain, the masculine mind loses interest. Not because men are cruel or shallow, but because desire thrives on uncertainty, effort, and emotional contrast. This is why the nice girl often finishes last, not because men don't want kindness, but because kindness without boundaries becomes invisible. Generosity without discernment becomes expected. Availability without standards becomes boring. You become like background music in his life, pleasant but forgettable, comforting but not compelling. Here's the truth that will change how you show up in relationships forever. Your value isn't measured by how much you give. It's measured by how he feels when he's around you. Does he feel challenged to be better? Does he feel grateful for your presence? Does he feel like he's constantly earning your attention? Or does he feel like he already has it no matter what he does? The most magnetic women understand that attraction is about energy, not effort. It's about creating an experience where he feels more alive, more masculine, more inspired just by being in your orbit. And that kind of energy doesn't come from doing more for him. It comes from being more yourself, more grounded, more selective, more anchored in your own worth. But here's where most women go wrong. They think being high value means being hard to get. So they swing too far in the opposite direction, playing games, withholding affection, creating unnecessary drama to seem mysterious. That doesn't work either, because it's still about him. It's still about trying to manipulate his feelings instead of simply being so rooted in your own value that his behavior doesn't shake you. True high value energy is calm. It's confident. It doesn't chase or run away. It simply exists fully and completely and invites the right man to rise up and meet it. And when you embody that energy, you don't have to worry about losing his interest, because the kind of man who's meant for you will feel compelled to keep earning your respect, your time, your heart. The first behavior that's silent I kills your value is something that feels so natural, so loving, that most women don't even realize they're doing it. Being constantly available. The moment he texts, you respond. When he wants to see you, you rearrange your schedule. If he needs something, you drop everything to help. You think you're being supportive, caring, showing him how much he means to you. But here's what's actually happening in his mind. When you're always available, you become predictable. And predictability is the enemy of desire. Think about it. Have you ever wanted something more when you knew you could have it anytime you wanted? Of course not. The things we value most are the things we have to wait for, work for, earn. When you're constantly available, you're essentially telling him, I have nothing more important in my life than you. My time, my energy, my attention are all yours whenever you want them. And while that might sound romantic, it's actually a form of self-abandonment that men find deeply unattractive. Not because they're heartless, but because they're wired to want what feels valuable. And things that are always available don't feel valuable. They feel convenient. There's a huge difference between the two. Here's what most women miss. When you're constantly available, you're not giving him space to miss you. You're not allowing anticipation to build. You're not creating any tension or polarity in the relationship. Everything becomes flat, predictable, safe. And while safety is important for long-term relationships, without some element of challenge and uncertainty, attraction dies. The woman who maintains her unavailability isn't playing hard to get. She's living her life. She has friends, hobbies, goals, routines that don't revolve around him. She's genuinely busy with things that matter to her. So when she is available, when she does make time for him, it feels special. It feels chosen, not default. This is why men often pull back when women become too available too quickly. It's not that they don't like you. It's that the chase is over. The challenge is gone. They've won your attention without having to truly earn it. And now they're looking for the next mountain to climb, the next goal to pursue. But here's the beautiful part. When you maintain your own life, when you're selective with your availability, when you make him work a little to see you, he starts to associate you with feelings of excitement, anticipation, and reward. Every time he gets your attention, it feels like a victory. Every time you agree to see him, it feels like he's won something precious. That's the difference between being chosen and being convenient. And if you want to be more than just convenient, you need to start treating your time like the valuable resource it is. The second behavior that destroys your value is something that comes from deep wounds but shows up as everyday anxiety, constantly seeking validation and reassurance. It sounds like this. Are we okay? Do you still like me? Why haven't you texted me back? Are you sure you're not mad at me? You tell yourself you just want to understand where you stand. But what you're really doing is asking him to manage your emotional state. Here's the harsh truth. Every time you seek reassurance, you're admitting that you don't feel secure in your own worth. You're essentially saying, I need you to convince me that I'm valuable because I don't believe it myself. And that kind of energy is exhausting for any ma and to be around. Not because men don't want to support their partners, but because constant reassurance seeking turns them from lovers into emotional caretakers. When you repeatedly ask for validation, you create a dynamic where the relationship becomes about managing your insecurities instead of enjoying each other's company. Every conversation becomes a therapy session. Every silence becomes a crisis. Every small shift in his energy becomes evidence that something's wrong. And gradually, he starts to associate being with you with stress, anxiety, and emotional labor. The problem with seeking constant reassurance is that it's never enough. You can get told you're loved, wanted, valued 100 times, but if you don't believe it internally, you'll need to hear it 101 times. The void isn't outside of you, it's within you, and no amount of external validation can fill an internal wound that hasn't been healed. Men are drawn to women who are emotionally stable, who can self-regulate, who don't need constant proof that they're worthy of love. They want to feel like their partner is with them because she chooses to be, not because she needs to be. There's a massive difference between choosing someone from a place of wholeness and clinging to someone from a place of fear. High-value women don't ask, "Do you still want me?" They embody the energy that makes the question unnecessary. They're so grounded in their own worth that they don't need constant confirmation from others. If something feels off in the relationship, they don't panic and demand reassurance. They observe, they listen, they give space for truth to emerge naturally. This doesn't mean you can never seek clarity or express concerns, but there's a difference between a confident check-in and an insecure spiral. One comes from strength, the other from fear. When you can hold yourself through uncertainty without needing someone else to soothe your anxiety, you become magnetic. Men start to feel drawn to your stability, your groundedness, your inner peace. The third behavior that kills your value is perhaps the most dangerous because it feels like love but creates resentment. Making him the center of your universe, it starts innocently enough. You meet someone amazing, you're excited, you want to spend time together, but gradually your life starts to revolve around his schedule, his moods, his availability. You cancel plans with friends to see him. You adjust your goals to fit his lifestyle. You stop doing the things that brought you joy because he's not interested in them. You think you're showing him how much he means to you, but here's what you're actually communicating. Your life was empty before him. You don't have anything interesting going on without him. You're willing to abandon yourself to keep his attention. And while some men might enjoy this in the short term, it inevitably leads to loss of respect and attraction. Men don't want to be the center of your universe. They want to be an important part of an already full, vibrant life. When you make him your whole world, you become one-dimensional. You lose the very qualities that attracted him in the first place, your independence, your passion, your individual energy. You stop being the woman he fell for and become someone who's waiting for him to complete her. Here's what most women don't understand. The most attractive thing about you isn't how much you need him. It's how complete you are without him. When a man meets a woman who has her own interests, friendships, goals, and joy that don't depend on his presence, he feels intrigued. He wants to be part of that rich, full life. But when he becomes the only source of your happiness, it stops feeling like a gift and starts feeling like pressure. This is why men often pull back when women drop everything for them. It's not that they don't appreciate the gesture. It's that they lose respect for someone who doesn't seem to value her own life enough to maintain it. They start to wonder, if she'll abandon everything for me this easily, what does that say about her standards, her self-worth, her ability to be a strong partner? The woman who maintains her own identity while in a relationship is infinitely more attractive than the one who disappears into the relationship. She brings energy, stories, experiences from her own life. She's not just reflecting his interests back to him. She's contributing her own unique perspective, her own goals, her own dreams. When you keep your own life vibrant and full, you don't just become more attractive to him, you become more interesting to yourself. You maintain the very essence that made you magnetic in the first place. And paradoxically, by not making him the center of everything, you create space for him to want to move closer to your center. The fourth behavior that destroys your value is one that good-hearted women fall into because they think it shows love. Over-functioning in the relationship. This is when you start doing his emotional work for him, managing his responsibilities, solving his problems, anticipating his needs before he even expresses them. You think you're being helpful, supportive, caring. But what you're actually doing is training him to be passive while you do all the work. Overfunctioning looks like always being the one to plan dates, to initiate difficult conversations, to remember important events, to fix conflicts, to make decisions. You become his project manager, his therapist, his mother, everything except his equal partner. And while he might appreciate the convenience, he'll never respect someone who does more work in his life than he does. Here's the psychology behind why this kills attraction. When you overfunction, you rob him of the opportunity to show up for you. You solve problems before he knows they exist. You manage emotions before he has to process them. You take responsibility for outcomes that should be shared. And gradually, he becomes lazy in the relationship because he doesn't have to be active. You're doing everything. Men need to feel useful, needed, capable of contributing. When you overfunction, you send the message that you don't trust him to handle his own life, that you don't believe he's capable of rising to meet challenges, that you're more competent than he is. And that dynamic kills the polarity that creates attraction. You become the masculine energy in the relationship while he falls into the feminine role of receiving your care. The overfunctioning woman often justifies this behavior by saying she's just being loving, just being helpful. But there's a difference between supporting someone and enabling them. Support helps someone grow stronger. Enabling keeps them dependent. When you consistently do things for a man that he should be doing for himself, you're not helping him, you're handicapping him. High-value women understand that their job isn't to fix, manage, or improve their partner. Their job is to be an inspiring presence that motivates him to want to show up better. They let men struggle with their own challenges, make their own decisions, learn from their own mistakes. They offer support when asked, but they don't take over. This doesn't mean you can't be helpful or caring. It means you maintain boundaries around what's your responsibility and what's his. You let him handle his own work stress, his own family drama, his own emotional processing. You're there to support him, but you're not there to save him from his own life. When you stop overfunctioning, something beautiful happens. He has to step up. He has to become more active, more present, more invested. Because if he doesn't, things don't get done, problems don't get solved. And slowly, he starts to take more ownership of his role in the relationship and in his own life. The fifth and final behavior that kills your value is the most subtle, but perhaps the most deadly, losing yourself to keep the peace. This is when you start compromising your values, suppressing your opinions, avoiding difficult conversations, and molding yourself into whatever you think he wants you to be. You silence the voice inside you that says, this doesn't feel right, because you're afraid that speaking up will create conflict or push him away. You laugh at jokes you don't find funny. You agree with opinions you don't share. You go along with plans you don't enjoy. You tolerate behavior that crosses your boundaries. You tell yourself you're being flexible, easygoing, low maintenance. But what you're really doing is disappearing. And you can't build a real relationship with someone who doesn't know who you really are. Here's what happens when you lose yourself to keep the peace. First, you build resentment. Every time you silence yourself, every time you compromise something important to you, you store a little bit of anger. And that anger eventually comes out, usually in ways that seem disproportionate to the situation. You explode over something small because you've been swallowing big things for too long. Second, he loses respect for you. Even if he doesn't consciously realize it, he notices when you don't have strong opinions, when you don't stand for anything, when you're always agreeable. And while it might be convenient in the moment, it's not attractive in the long term. Men are drawn to women who know who they are and aren't afraid to show it. Third, you lose yourself. You become so focused on being what you think he wants that you forget what you actually want. You lose touch with your own desires, your own goals, your own values. And ironically, in trying to become more lovable, you become less interesting, less authentic, less yourself. The woman who loses herself to keep the peace thinks she's being loving, but she's actually being dishonest. She's presenting a false version of herself and then wondering why the relationship doesn't feel genuine. She's expecting him to love someone he doesn't even know because she's never let him see who she really is. High-value women understand that real love requires real truth. They know that if they have to hide parts of themselves to keep someone, then that person isn't really choosing them. They're choosing a performance, and performances are exhausting to maintain and impossible to sustain. This doesn't mean you should be confrontational or argumentative. It means you should be authentic. Express your opinions, share your preferences, voice your concerns. Set your boundaries. Let him see all of you, the easy parts and the challenging parts, the light and the shadow. Because only when someone sees all of you can they truly choose all of you. When you stop losing yourself to keep the peace, you might discover that some people aren't compatible with the real you. And that's okay. Better to be alone and authentic than coupled and invisible. The right person will appreciate your depth, your complexity, your willingness to be real even when it's not comfortable. If you've recognized yourself in any of these behaviors, take a breath. This isn't about shame or self-criticism. This is about awareness, because awareness is the first step toward change. Most women fall into these patterns not because they're weak or needy, but because they've been taught that this is what love looks like. That love